Hi guys.
Hi.
Hello, Andrei. Hello, Mike. Oh, so we are waiting for your presentation, of course, and your speech. And can you please few words about what we are uh, waiting for?
Well, actually, I would speak about how I used Java functions on my project and my experience, what issues I faced, what was great, and what to do next with that information.
Okay, great. Oh. And Andrei, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Personal experience is always very interesting topic because I have also some personal experience and it goes like vice versa with your presentation and with previous presentation because when I was working with serverless, it was JavaScript, but it's stop word for this
Mhm.
presentation because we're talking about Java today.
Yeah. We most not only about Java, about clouds, and very interesting because most of our colleagues, me, we are working with AWS. I don't know why. Well, I know why it's so popular. However, Azure not stay on the place and developing services and so on. And IWS market will. Growing, I mean, that Azure will be used more and more in the future. Why? Because Java inside, as I told earlier, usually when we're thinking about Microsoft, this is a .NET development, yeah? And maybe this year and maybe earlier, Microsoft began actively introduce Java in their services. So Java in Microsoft, wow. And of course, in Azure. I don't know how it's on current iteration. Mike will tell about this, what Java and Azure looks like now. However, in the future, it will be maybe more powerful. So,
If somebody knows, please type in comments. Is it possible to run lambdas with Java on GCP platform? Because some time ago I wasn't able to do that. I'm not sure about current time.
oh, interesting question. GCP and Lambdas.
On Java,
But what
on Java.
Java and Lambdas. And what about Azure? We can?
Yeah, we can, but some issues, of course, about.
But some issues.
Yeah,
Yeah, but without issues, we don't have any chance to run something.
yeah,
And
that's not like when everything is working, there is no there is nothing to speak about. But when something is not
Exactly.
working, there is a topic for presentation.
yeah.
That's great.
We know. Colleagues who work with us, tell us in comments what you are working with more, AWS, Azure, or did you had a chance to work with both, or you working only on Azure, and your minds about if you had a chance to work with both, yeah, or what is more convenient, more interesting, powerful for from your point of view. Write in comments because it's very interesting topic for all of us.
And maybe somebody
Okay,
has experience with GCP.
GCP, we need to create a separate topic with GCP, I guess. In today's topics, we don't
Separate.
have, but in the future, we have to cover
Probably yes.
this. Mhm. Okay, Mike, word to you. Let's move in Azure in Java.
Oh, okay, let's go. Yeah, first of all, uh, we support Ukraine, and there is a fund that helps Ukrainian refugees, and there is a link, QR code. This money will be spent on the what you can see on the pictures on the right side. And I would like, yeah, I would leave it maybe for a minute for guys who want to donate to have time to scan QR code, and after that we could proceed. Yeah. Okay, I think let's go next. Well, once upon a time, uh, I started to use Azure Functions with Java, and like my suggestion was not to do that, and I would like to tell you why that happened, what I was facing, what happened, and and like actually my experience. Well, let's start with self-introduction. Maybe I would tell a bit about myself. I'm senior software engineer in EPAM, working as a team lead. My last project was based on Azure and Spring. Basically, like everything there was like connected about Azure, so we used most of the services, like Cosmos DB, Key Vaults, APIM, Event Hubs, and also we tried to use Azure Functions. We had them not that much in our team, but I introduced them into our team, and that was at the same time was a good experience and sometimes not the best one. Well, let's speak at first what is an Azure function. Actually, like if you haven't been working with serverless, for you to understand, you just actually write some code in one function, and this code would be executed. Of course, there are several limitations, and let's start with them. The first one is stateless. You should understand that your function is like some kind of a static function that doesn't have a context. So you're not able to store like some variables into local ones. And you should understand that. Well, also one thing that everybody is speaking about is hold and cold start. I would speak about that a bit later, but for you to understand, hot start, it's when the function is working, and cold start when you need to start it to make it work. One of the main features why Azure why serverless and functions are really great solution is autoscaling. Just imagine you don't need to think about running your own servers. You just post some code and then it just starts working, and it scales in case you have high load, and it kills other machines in case you have nothing to do with that. This also makes a bit cheaper for you and of course for person work, so you don't pay for developers to handle. Also, like you can actually have some state, but for that you need a storage account. You basically connect the database to your function and you save all your states inside database, but that's like a bit more difficult and that takes more of your time. And there are mainly, especially in Azure, there are mainly three ways of how to trigger a function. Three ways: HTTP, Event Hub, or Scheduler. HTTP means you expose your function to the worldwide or like inside your network, and somebody can hit it with a REST or like usually with a REST by the REST event HTTP request. By Event Hub, you can receive a message and trigger your code execution after message, or by a scheduler, like once in a minute, for example, you send a notification, I don't know, something like that. Well, basically, the difference between a cold start and a warm start. Hot start is basically cold start without preparation. So what is cold? Azure, like when you first hit your function, it doesn't like working. So Azure allocates a server, usually like a machine, like in Amazon is two machine. It deploys its own work on this machine. Then the function basically started to load into the memory, and then only your code runs. In the hot preparation, everything that is passed, and then only your code is running. Well, one thing like to mention that in Azure there are like a premium subscription tier. In that case, you don't need to think about cold start in several directions. It will be like at least one function always will be running. Well, especially to mention about versions. Now there are like 4 versions, but I found open statistics for version 1 and 2, and you can see that Java, it takes from 20 up to 30 seconds for cold start. For C# and for JavaScript, it's a bit smaller, but still it exists. We'll speak about that a bit more after scaling. So what I was trying to do with my Azure function, we had a task, and I needed to implement an OpenID Connect client. Basically, it's several API calls, basically OAuth2 plus user info endpoint, a custom one. So it is discovery, authorization, token, and user info. User info is a custom call with custom fields, so we decided not to use Octa because it was paid and we need it fast, so we did it ourselves. Actually, also it doesn't store any state. That's why it was an easy solution to do not to do a microservice, but to do just a function. And it should be exposed to internet because it should be available for everybody who uses this. Well, why I considered to use Azure Function for that. First of all, it has different languages, as you can see on the presentation: Java, Node.js, C#, Python, Bash, but also to mention there are different versions. For Python, it's mostly like, I think, third version, but for Java, they have 8 and 11. Unfortunately, no 17 yet. For Node.js, much more versions, and for C# also some versions. Some other developers from my team had experiences with AWS, so it was familiar for them how to use functions, because usually they're kind of the same. And I would speak a bit more about plugin support that has different ideas, like different code editors, and deployment from local to cloud. That's actually works. You can do it from one, like in 2 buttons, actually, like 2 clicks, and that's kind of easy. It could save budget. In my cases, that was not the main point, but it was more about fast development. And also you can collect perfect metrics from the special service that gives you opportunity, and it's like really a lot, and you can easily like even connect to SSH. Yeah, that's actually like how the plugin looks in Visual Studio Code, and that's how it looks in IntelliJ IDEA. Actually, in IntelliJ IDEA, it's a limited version because, like, Azure prefers its own code editor, and they even announced Java support there. I'm not sure how they want to beat IntelliJ IDEA. I have no idea how that would happen ever, but they try. And yeah, so basically from here you open function app and just click start, like deploy, and that's basically it. Like refresh, and there is like a deploy button. Well, that's looks how the dashboard looks when you deploy your own function, and you can see the information about here. Like you can see all the app environments. You can connect to the SSH console, like SSH, or it's on a Windows machine. You can connect to Bash directly. And I think that's all about here. Well, what were disadvantages I found out? First of all, there were like several issues on local deployment. I was using Mac at the time, and it was Mac M1. And with that, when I was starting my local application, it was starting perfectly. Like, when you need to start the debug, you need to start like basically 2 processes. You need to start the function, you need to start the debugger itself, and you need to attach the debugger to your Java running function. You need to expose your port. So in my cases, it was starting the function. Then when I was stopping it, it wasn't stopping it. It was just stopping the debugger and not stopping the function. And when I was starting a new function, like it was starting a new function, but attaching the same debugger to the old function. So in my case, when I was rerunning the function, I just had several copies on functions, and I was not able to identify why I changed my code, but the behavior doesn't change. And that was not the best decision. Also, for me, in my case, like I was using this for OpenID Connect client. It was used for mobile. So for me, local was like kind of difficult to reproduce, and I wanted to use it in remote, like to deploy it, because I needed to click it from the mobile app. And in my case, it was no remote debug. There are some issues that there are third version and fourth version. In third version, there is no such function, and in fourth version there is, but it's only on Linux or on Linux machine. But in our like DevOps is created a template for Windows machine, and that's finished to work. Also, in third version, there was issues with custom logs. No self4g, no log4g, like no login, only the custom like Azure provided login. And yeah, at first I was surprised why I can't see any logs. Also, no editing in Portal. For JavaScript, you can type your code directly into the browser and deploy it. It's not like really big thing like what to speak about, but it's like one of the things you want to have because other languages have it and you can't understand why you don't have it. Secondly, for example, like they created the plugin for the IntelliJ IDEA, and they have like around 90% of functionality. And after that, you need to use, in case you want to use the left 10%, you need to use Visual Studio Code. For Java developers, I found it as a bug. Like we had a Gradle project in IntelliJ, you can easily build a Gradle project in Visual Studio Code. It's in preview mode. So we had like a kind of a custom path for our project. I mean, the structure, we had like an app folder and API folder. API is like an auto-generated one to make it OpenAPI client. And in my case, Visual Studio Code was not able to build the code, to build and to recognize the Gradle project. And that's what's end for me. So it wasn't able to do it. Yeah, and remote debug remote debug available only from Visual Studio Code. And there was one funny backend deployment. I would tell a bit later about it. Actually, it's here. How do you deploy basically? What is done? You don't like deploy jar. You build a zip file with a special plugin, and you basically upload the plugin just like you can upload it manually or just upload it via button. No difference. In my case, it was just an error has occurred. That's all. The whole message, like nothing else. I was investigating that I think for like half a day, maybe a day, and I found out that it happens because the Java runtime logs the var file in case you used a previous function. So what I did, we had a template function. I uploaded into the function I created, and then I made the clone like a fork basically from it and edit my code. And when I did a new function, it was not able to be deployed. I mean, that's usually not the thing you usually do, but in case you find out that and you face it on your project, it might be an issue. So actually like deleting the function and recreating helped me. Yeah, well, to sum up, and I will speak about more like cold and start time a bit later. After that, like there is a bonus little. And about like what to sum up, it's like really smooth deployment. I need almost zero DevOps work just to create a repository for me. It's really good for jobs and for stateless applications, and of course for notifications. Like to send a message notification is really not a difficult thing. And of course, guys, do not use it with Java, not right now. And of course, there are alternatives. We could create a managed service. It was like a fully microservice with all the deployments. But imagine for that, we need to create a pipeline to deploy it, write integration tests maybe, create unit tests, create all the templates, like allocate a special server, add it into the cluster, Kubernetes. That's like really a lot of work. And for DevOps, like to expose it, we have like all our services in one cluster that is not exposed to internet by default. So in my case, I needed to use a PIM also, and that would take like lots of time. Third-party solutions, there is Okta, which makes most of my work in my case, but it's like, first of all, it's paid. And when you write a project for another customer, to approve a paid solution would take you months because they need to allocate the budget, they need to sign up a contract because you cannot use it like a free trial, because like for legal issues. Yeah, that's. And there is a bonus. Of course, there is like. Oh yeah, just wait, not that fast. There is a bonus. You can run native images on Azure Functions. The idea that starting from Spring 3, Spring Native is like Spring Boot 3 version. Spring Boot Native is included inside the Azure, included in the Spring Boot. And you can easily build a Spring Native image and run it, and it will start really fast. But the one thing you need to remember about like the cold start, the idea here that even with a premium tier, when you have at least one instance running, just imagine in case you have a high load, the images like to be deployed, like a regular Java, you'll still need to wait for the cold start to be at least the third function to deploy. Just imagine you have one request per minute, and for example, like one instance can handle like, I don't know, 10 requests. For example, is a really difficult job, get time consuming. In your case, when you have 15 requests in a minute, like in once, it will not be able to handle it, and it will start to recreate a new image. In that case, it will take you at least 20 seconds to wait, and the clients will have to wait. 5 clients will have to wait, and at least 20 seconds. In most cases, like people usually have retries for 5, I think, seconds. So in your case, well, in case they have like 4 retries, that will work for you. In case they have 3 retries, they may fail, and your client will not be able to handle that. So I think you really need to think, and Spring Native might help here, but again, like Spring Native, at least for now, with all this like Graal VM, makes it like a bit difficult because you lose lots of Java features that you really want to use. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening. I'm open for questions and for discussions. I see several questions in the chat.
Yes. Yes, we have a question about Java cold start time. What was the implementation? Because our colleagues had a similar issue with Spring because it's very heavy dependency injection framework. And then when they switched to lightweight framework, issue was solved. What was your implementation?
Yeah, well, first of all, like when we're speaking about Spring, you might see that first of all, Spring by itself is not that fast framework. The idea that it's when you just build a new image, like a new project, it will start, as I remember, at least on Mac, for 2-3 seconds. It will just start. In case you add a database connection for local host, I think it's already 6-7 seconds. In case you have lots of bins, it start to work them and it's at additional time. In case you have I don't know, security, for example, you need to get a token on a remote server, that will take at least 2 more seconds. In case you have Kafka, that will take you around I don't know, 20 maybe seconds, because Kafka has really lots of connections. How they do that? Connecting to Kafka via Spring integration or Spring Cloud is I think a pain. And well, you can do lazy startup, so not to load all the beans and just call them in case you will do a lazy startup, that at the same time that will decrease your speed time, but when it will increase the first calling of the time. So in case it really depends, it might be help, but I don't think that's the solution. I know, for example, you can use a Quarkus for that. I think that's a better solution, maybe Micronaut, but actually I had a negative experience working with Micronaut. For me, it was not the best solution. At the same time, maybe Google, how's it called? Google Juice, I think, right?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, it might help. It's a lightweight dependency injection framework. I think that could work here.
Yeah, if you take Micronaut or Quarkus, you will lose something some Spring features like Spring data and something like that.
Yeah, I remember the idea of the idea of Spring Boot, that you write as less configuration as possible, and everything is auto-configured. In Micronaut, that doesn't work. That doesn't work like that. You need to configure everything yourself. And I remember I was connecting a database, a Hibernate basically, and to make the Spring Data GPA, some kind of it in Micronaut, that took me I don't know, hundreds of lines in XML, configuring the policies and then creating configuration files. I mean, I would not recommend that. I mean, maybe it's in case you need that fast start time, maybe it's an option, but was not my case. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Do you know, is Azure Functions the only service which works not so well with Java?
Well, I think the best version there is, I would actually call, I think it's like C# because it's like natively for Azure, and I think JavaScript because it's just like really easy to do it. I mean, compiled languages is a bit difficult to work with in serverless, and interpreted languages, I think it's a bit easier, like Python at the same time. But Python is like at the same time not that fast as it could be. And so it's also an option. I saw there is a version of Bash. I cannot really imagine how that's possible. I mean, I think some guys could do that, like in Bash language, like do IP calls. I don't know, connection to database. But I think that just they made it just for fun. Like we could add a label, nobody else added. I think that the version interesting. Is it possible, like to run a Bash on a Linux machine, just for fun? No? Yeah. So I think of course, there are other languages that doesn't really work well with Java. I think that definitely.
Question is about another Azure services that doesn't work with Java
Services.
really well. Yes, maybe you know.
Well, services. Oh, but like other services, like are mostly like you don't. I mean, you don't really put your service like code inside these services. Like for example, even Hub is like a working service for Kafka. Like message bus, you publish a message, you don't write your code there like directly. Like EC2 does it really, like, I mean, Kubernetes, like you use your Docker images, it doesn't really depends which language you use there. I'm not sure, like I remember in Google Cloud there is App Engine that is able to run applications directly. Maybe there is something like something similar in Azure. I'm not really sure. Haven't been working with that. Yeah, maybe that would work, but not sure. I don't think that there are like services that really connected to Java. Yeah, actually,
If
I know,
you
like,
take something like EC2, you will have simple virtual machine and that's it.
yeah, actually, I know, like with Java, we had like a kind of an issue. We used service bus, no, not service bus, even hubs, like it's for Kafka, and there were like different serializers. And half of our project was using one serializer, and half of project was using a new one serializer, like kind of a default one. And because of legacy, they built the previous serializer, and some messages were not able to be deserialized back. And it was a situation that half of the queues were working on one serializer, and half of the queues were working on another serializer. And that's because previously they didn't include like a default serializer into the library, like a connector. And that was fun. Like actually, you sent a message and then you realize that it's not able to be read. So yeah, but they actually improving, and now it's fixed. Yeah, and I see there is the last question, right?
Probably yes. I'm pretty sure you know such popular solution how to solve cold start issue is to implement something like continuous warm up, some scheduler that will warm up your Lambda function. Inside Lambda function, you will have some kind of if it's real call, will invoke this function. If it's warm up, will just return zero, something like that. And do you think, your opinion, is it really serverless or something goes wrong?
Well, first of all, like in case you want to have this, you can write your own function that will work on scheduler and click other functions. That's like self-automation, like machines already starting working without people, like communicating, like just to make sure it works. Again, like in Azure, there is premium tier. At least one machine, at least like one function will be always alive. But that doesn't solve the issue of a cold start in case you have a really huge load. because one function will serve, but for scaling, you will still need to wait a cold start for scaling, because like when you want to scale, you have to wait a cold start. So like continuously warming up, like just use a premium tier, that will work. But I don't really think that's the thing you need to do yourself. At least, I mean, it might save you some of your work, but again, in Azure, there is no exact definition how much time you need to, like, the function can die like in 30 seconds or can die in a minute. There is no a predefined set of like limit of time that you really need to wait for that. So in case you make a scheduler for 10 seconds for each function in your project, yeah, that might be working, but use premium time that. But I would really suggest to decrease the cold start time as much as possible, at least in your application, and in that case, it will solve most of the issues. And asking your time, is it like a real serverless? I think still yes, because in that case, you more think not about infrastructure, but you think more about code. And it really helps. I think it really helps solving business issues, business like problems, and like you don't really think about much about infrastructure. Like for microservices, you need like 3 DevOps. For Azure Functions, you need like half of DevOps to manage that.
We have one more question. Do you see, and how do you see the future of Java in Azure in general?
Well, first of all, like now they introduced, like Azure, Microsoft basically introduced that they're going like to implement full Java support in Visual Studio Code. First of all, like Visual Studio Code is a free editor, but I don't really think that Java developers will switch to Visual Studio Code. At least for me, I don't really like it. I mean, I tried it myself. It's really fast. It's faster than IntelliJ IDEA itself. But at the same time, I mean, the UI is completely different. The idea of plugins is different. You need to install everything yourself. And for me, as a user that was not really a fan of like Visual Studio Code, I was not able like to understand even how to start it like Java function there, because it was not that obvious. In IntelliJ IDEA, in case you open it, it's like more complex, like much more complex. It's like, like a really complex UI that you open and you see lots of functions there, like what you can do, like a lot of functionality. In general, I think in Azure, like they will support Java as much as possible, because right now for development, you don't really need Visual Studio Code. Like in case you don't use Lambdas, like everything else works fine. We have like around like 40 microservices there running with like different subscriptions, and everything works fine. Especially like now you build like everything in Docker, most likely like your application will run in Docker, and it doesn't really it doesn't really mean for you like on which service you run it, because any will support. For example, Azure provides its own like images for Java, which you don't need to pay, because in case you use Oracle, you need to pay like $25 per each machine you're running your Java JVM running. With Azure, they provide your own like image, and you don't need to pay for that, and you can use it for free, like inside the Azure, of course. The same with Amazon. I don't remember how it's in Azure, but in Amazon it's like AWS Caretta, I think, or Amazon Caretta.
Yes.
The same one exists for Azure one. I think they will add like more connectors and improve them. They do that like every release. With Java like function, they already added, like there are 4 versions. In fourth, they added the login framework, the custom one. They added the support of remote debugging. I think they like really improving, but of course that will take time. Like for any new technologies, you need to feel all that pain before really using it. And when everybody will use it, like they will be, once I think they can be the leaders of the market.
Exactly, you're right.
So I've decided to join to your discussion, our discussion, because we're very interesting. And one of our J talks, we conducting J talks periodically inside our company. We already discussed this Microsoft decision to integrate Java and support frameworks inside Microsoft idea. And one of the interesting things here that all integrated things here are. Oh, sorry, it's my Java dog with me. His name Alice. So our idea was that Microsoft purpose is free of charge, yeah, and idea integrated payable plugins inside. And here we see that it's possible that Microsoft will win this battle, and Java developers will start to use Microsoft IDEA. So what do you think? Is it possible in future? Because so far I see that we don't.
Well, I think for them it would be easier to buy IntelliJ IDEA, in my opinion. Only in that case, I would start using Microsoft for development, local, at least right now. Well, I think Microsoft have enough money to do it. Like, secondly, like for C# guy, that might be a bit not that nice to listen, but like in case people are not starting to use C#, like we will integrate Java and they will start using us. In that case, like there is lots of codes running in Java, and it's easier to integrate it into Azure than to switch to the language, because like integrate cloud is a bit easier than like to switch the whole application.
Yeah. And guys, colleagues who are watching us, I remind that you have a chance to win a free license for IDEA. If you're not using Microsoft IDEA, you have a chance to use Ultimate IDEA from JetBrains. So it's all things in Discord, and somebody going
Actually,
to win.
there is like one more question from Smart TV, I think. Smart TV.
Yeah, Andrei, please read the question.
Which one? 1 second.
I can read it myself. Like,
Okay.
Yes, sure. If you see it.
deploy using Docker images, containers, and you will avoid all the problems you had with the deployment, and will enjoy additional features like function container customization. Yes,
It means
no.
not to use default one, but create your custom container.
The idea that like to get away from language. At the same time, that will work. I mean, that's a good idea, but at the same time, like for remote debugging, how do you imagine that? You need to open a special port, like you need to open like 5005 port again, for example, for Java development. And in case you go like with the in case you do that, like what is the difference like to deploy Docker image on Kubernetes cluster than on Azure function? Just auto-scaling, but you can put like auto-scaling in I don't remember, like in AWS there is a special service that handles this. You put a Docker image and that I don't remember the name, guys.
Fargate.
Pardon?
Fargate one. Fargate.
Yeah, I mean, Fargate. Like you put in Docker image and it's do the same like as you mentioned here. The idea of a function that you write your code, you basically put your code inside the function and you execute it. In case you want to do the same with the Docker, just use Fargate. You don't need like the functions. I think Azure has something similar. I'm sure that Google Cloud has it, definitely. GCP, I don't remember. I think Google Email, no.
Google uses Kubernetes for these purposes, usually.
Yeah, but I think there is an additional service, like just for one Docker image, it could be working there.
I do not remember. Yeah, because it's some distinction between Kubernetes and Fargate. It's a bit different. Fargate is really, really serverless, but Kubernetes is over some physical machines.
Yeah, but like all serverless is over physical machine. I mean, you still have no idea
how much is hidden.
Yeah, it's like how much you need like to dig to get into the machine itself. But I mean, when you do the same with Docker, that just goes a bit away from Java functions, like, or at least from function. Yeah.
Okay, so we don't see any more questions so far. Colleagues, maybe somebody of us want to ask something else, not related to exact topic, something about Azure. And from my side, for Andrei, maybe question: did you had a chance to work with Azure? Can you highlight the most powerful things from Azure?
I really adore Azure DevOps because it combines both Wiki, Confluence, CI/CD at the same time in one place. This is my favorite service from Azure.
Yeah, actually, I liked it also because we had like, from my experience, it's like, first of all, it's like really easy to find the pipelines and configure them by default, and secondly, there is another way. We were running like custom, like EPAM custom test cases, and they were integrated with Azure somehow. So like you open in the pipeline, you open the link, and it's open in Azure, like the test result, basically some kind of Allure.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah,
really
so
awesome.
they really have good integrations, and of course, like infrastructure as a code, like fully supported.
Yeah, because an old approach, when you have Jenkins, when you have performance tests, and another way you have separate Confluence, separate Wiki, separate Git,
Grafana.
Grafana, how to integrate it in between somehow. You need to open probably some ports, permissions, security, and it's terrible.
Yeah, but
Everything is in
you
one
also
place.
need to mention like login inside the Azure is not the best thing.
Why?
Well,
Why?
I mean, login, like not login like log in, but like login framework, like getting the logs, because they have like their special services, like how to read the logs, and you need to learn their like custom SQL language. No, not SQL, but like custom language, like some kind of like in Kibana, to get the logs, and like that's not the best thing, because
It's
sometimes you're not
interesting.
sure where to
And
look at the
sorry, can you please give more details why it's not good? Because logs, it's our helper to find some issue in the production, for example. And if Azure is not good with logging, wow.
No, that depends like what you define by good. Like in my experience, like when you create, like for example, for microservice, you create like an application, then you connect like how it's called, let me remember, I think app inside application that takes all the logs and aggregates itself. At first, you need to understand that it aggregates the logs of the whole cluster. Then you need to filter these logs by your name of your service, like microservice, and then you get in all the logs from all the services. So in case it will be in production, you will have like as much machines as you have, the same amount of logs then you will have. And they have like their own custom of language. Like you can get into it and you can learn it, but why you're not able just like to get the grabs from directly from one machine easily? I mean, it's possible from the Kubernetes cluster, but not that easily from the UI. And that's not, I mean, they have like several like buttons with the word log, and you need to know directly in which one to click, because when a new person comes to the team, he see like 5 buttons where to click on the logs, and no one, this one doesn't work. You need to go to app insights and click in from the drop down where they have like custom login, they have logs, they have activity log, and there is something else, and you need to choose the right one. That's not
Wow.
that obvious.
So it's time consuming to find what happens, the correct log, and sometimes you're mixing up because in
Yeah, and
production when you have
you need
dozens
to
of
remember that sometimes like this login works in like in a queue. If a queue is stacked, and for example you don't have enough space, like your subscription, for example, have 50 gigabytes of logs, So they will save only like 50 gigabytes, and that doesn't have like any meaning that somebody will overwrite your logs and your service have the logs.
Phew.
It's like shared
So
50 gigabytes.
and here maybe some tweaks you have to be more to make this process convenient for you. How
Well,
you
I was
do?
connecting directly to kubectl cluster and reading the logs from a pod.
Oh, so
From
old
the client. Old way
directly.
works perfectly for me.
That's
Okay, so
great. If you have this
for
access.
Well,
so we have a lot of tools, but we like to go directly in machine and read log from the pod.
TXT
Guys
file.
watching us, write in comments what do you think about reading logs from a machine directly without
well,
using.
to admit, Azure provides like a great way, like you can filter the logs by arrow code, for example. They have like in a PIM level, like a PIM is basically a PIM management way. So like all the requests go to a PIM and then to your machines. They have like really good login system there, like the same issues, but you can filter by the status code, you can filter by the URL, you can filter by param requests, by the arrow codes. You can, I think, even filter by the time, so you can like get the direction, how many times of the calls get, like all the analytics basically. And that was the good thing there.
Oh, I have one more question. How did you expose your functions? Was
By
it
default,
direct call or some load balancer?
yeah, by default it's exposed itself, but in my case we need to do it through a PIM level.
Okay. I got it.
You basically create open API file and upload it to a PIM and put the base URL to your function.
Yeah. We saw a response how to improve functions performance in Azure.
Google
Guys
Dagger,
switched
yeah.
to Google Dagger, yes, and it was a good one.
It's like I think it's like the same as, not the same, but like kind of similar to Google Juice. I
If
haven't
it's
been using that, but that's just my suggestion.
yeah, but if this is the same as Google Juice, just OC framework, maybe it's more performable because of lightweight, but you will need to implement a lot of logic you may need. So depends on situation to use or not to use. Google
And when you
Dagger.
implement it, it becomes the same.
Yeah, I want to implement, but you will spend time, nervous, and you still will not thought about the next generation of programmers. Is they are ready to drill in fast in new technology for them and understand new, like let's say, framework, because you're starting to implement new framework from the scratch. It's interesting for you, maybe that, yeah, but for next generation of developers, they will need to think in your way, to understand your mindset. And again, about documentation, it's our next topic here. But how to document all the things properly? Does Azure provide some tools for documentation, from code maybe to Confluence, to do this in easy way?
Well, a PIM, like one of the things that provide that, like you upload the OpenIP files, and OpenIP file is also like a documentation, kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can easily export all the endpoints you have, and you'll have like kind of self documentation. Not sure of anything else. I think there is like, yeah, well, documentation is basically on Azure not my best, not my strongest skill there. I haven't written there any documentation. Maybe there is some. Like, is comments to sections, is it connected? Logs?
Developers usually hate documentation. Developers like to code.
Yeah, totally agree. And the same for me when I'm writing the code and I need documentation. Oh, it's a time-consuming thing. But when you thinking about project as manager, maybe as architect, yeah, without documentation, you need to debug to understand code, and it's again time-consuming. So it's a craft to provide correct and
Exactly.
simple doc. And sometimes when developer reading documentation, it's not clear enough what he wrote about in this text. I don't understand. And you in this need not only put text, but draw diagrams. And this is of course art. Okay, colleagues, I don't see.
We can, I think,
Oh,
I
we should
see.
move to
I see
Discord.
one
I
more
see one
question.
more question. Yeah,
Yeah,
Andrei, please.
let's answer the last question and we'll move to Discord. Question is,
Okay.
we have a problem with call start in Java when we need to create some like database connection or Kafka connections. Is it better to use C# or JS? I suppose it's really holy war question. And we can start and move to Discord to discuss
Yeah,
it.
let's go there. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, colleagues, the links to Discord you have in the comments, in the description of this video. Andrei, I guess you can join Discord too with Mike
Yes,
and
yes.
proceed there. So, what do you think about Azure, your minds now after discussion with Mike?
We need to wait with Java on Azure. I'm pretty sure on that. But it's a growing technology, and we can consider it in a year to see how it's going. That's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Maybe year is a happy case, I guess maybe 2 or maybe 5, because it's rather large period for implementing new technology in their ecosystem, yeah, and new processes, and they need to influence on us, I mean engineers, to take a look on them. So yeah, but world changing and Azure trying to change something. It's changes all time in good.
Anyway, it really depends on the situation what you have. If you have some tricky case when Azure gives you a big discount and in your company you have only Java developers and you need to save some costs for Kubernetes, yes, Azure Function is a rather good choice even right now. If you do not have some strict performance requirements, it depends.
Yeah,
It's the favorite answer. It depends.
it depends, but it's true because are we talking about enterprise and big with I don't know 10 years of history, or yeah, or something new like startup that should be scalable in the future or not?
For
A lot
startups,
of
it's a
things.
really good thing.
Yeah, because they are free to use any kind of technology stack, and of course, it saves their costs. The most important thing for any startup or for any project, costs.
Exactly.